All right, welcome everyone to Time Warp 1982 40th anniversary. We're talking about the movies and pop culture of July and August of 1982. In this special edition of Time Warp, we're going to cover all the years in movies. And I know it's been a little late since we've gotten around to it. It's November as we're recording this, but we are here and we're excited to talk about 1982. And this is part 4, guys, and we got some good movies for you guys. And I'm Kevin. I'm going to be your host. I'd like to welcome, of course, my awesome co-host. With me, as always, is co-founder of the Fandom Podcast Network, my best friend, Mr. Kyle Wagner. What's up, buddy? Welcome.
Well, it's a podcasting tradition for me, apparently, because we have another hurricane.
Stop that.
Nicole's here to push me back into time with her wins, but actually I'm very excited for this. I've been doing a little time warping myself, Mr. Reitzel. I just went through a marathon of the classic game show Starcade, which happened to air most of its episodes in 1982.
Oh, wow, that's cool. That's trying to remember if that's hard watch or not. I can't remember.
I'm gonna say this. It's a nostalgia watch for the video games, especially when they're talking about the new hot games like Tron and Star Wars. But the clothes and the hair, yeah, that's a little rough.
Well, you know what? We can't do a time warp. I mean, we could, just wouldn't be as fun or as interesting. I like to welcome Miss Movie Foo, Miss Lacee Aderhold. What's going on, Lacee?
Hello.
How are you?
I'm well. How are you? I'm very excited. We haven't done one of these in a minute.
I know. That's on me. Been a little busy, been a little preoccupied, but we got these. These are kind of like some of the bigger summer movies that we're going to be talking about, and a couple little odd ones here and there. So I'm excited about this. But you know what, guys? You know, it's been a while since we've done the last one. And we've been obviously taking a little bit different approach with this year's Time Warp. We've been obviously talking about some movies we haven't seen because, you know, when we learn about them and we talk about them amongst each other, if we haven't seen it, maybe we can maybe just whether or not we do want to see them and maybe leave it up to the listeners to see if they want to or not. But just doing this podcast has made me want to obviously try some new movies, try some new things. Just want to leave it out there. Was there anything from the last shows or anything that you guys jumped to and watched that you know we're thinking about? Maybe I could do this now. I don't know, Lacee.
I watched. Oh gosh, I went through and I watched like 3 or 4 of the. I actually went back to January, February, and I had watched a whole 3 or 4 different ones, and now my brain is just like, no, you get no information from me. What was the one? Was it Franny and Zoe? No, Franny and Alexander? I don't know. Anyway, I did watch a bunch of them, but none of them were, let's say, classics and or gems. So
Gotcha.
None of them were memorable enough for me to remember right now.
Kyle, what about you? Anything that you jumped into in the 80s there?
What's funny is I found myself watching more stuff that I had seen and hadn't watched in a while. One is actually a couple of the films that we're doing today. I jumped into. I even attempted to watch Poltergeist, and I was like, "Yeah, I can't get nightmares right now."
That's a tough watch. It's a scary movie. It's disturbing.
It was Halloween.
Nice. It's 83, I believe, but I watched Outsiders for the first time with Aaron. That young cast. Yeah, it was.
Have you seen Rumblefish?
No, I have not seen it.
Okay.
That's on the radar though. But
Nice.
That was interesting, and that was an S.E. Hinton story, which we're going to touch on a little bit later. But yeah, that was interesting, and also first time watching Tootsie, and we're going to cover that later. Never seen Tootsie all the way through, nice. So we'll obviously touch on that next episode. But yeah, so we got some stuff to get in here, guys. So let's go ahead and let's get into some fun stuff here. Now, as I've mentioned, this is Time Warp 1982. All movies and all of these events are sharing the 40th anniversary. 40 years ago. Yes, this is making me feel old. And this is part 4. We're talking about July and August. And before we do that, though, I think it's time that we step back into 1982. Let's fuel up that DeLorean with the flux capacitor. A slingshot around the sun and the board that captured Klingon bird of prey. Maybe take a step into that blue police box or phone booth. Step into that quantum leap accelerator or take a dip in that hot tub time machine. Oh, yeah. As we travel back to 1982, as I make Lacey cringe. And we're going to remind you of what was happening in pop culture, sports, politics, television, and of course, the movies of 1982.
Hey, Kevin.
All right. Yes.
Kevin, did Hot Tub Time Machine, you did remember to put fresh chlorine into that, right?
God, no. It wouldn't work. No. That is one dirty one. So yeah, we're going to keep that full dirty. So now we did want to remind the listeners that we are having this on YouTube if you haven't watched it yet, and because we're going to have some pictures of the posters of the movies and some other visual aids. So make sure you definitely check out the YouTube video of this. So let's get into having some fun. Of course, this is the Fandom Podcast Network, guys, and if you haven't already, please subscribe to the YouTube channel. We'd appreciate that. But let's get into 1982, the year that you were born. Of course, some in style. We had members only jackets, acid wash jeans, original jams, parachute pants, Converse chucks, Reebok high tops, Esprit, Guess jeans, Swatch watches, Wayfarer sunglasses, and big teased up hair. Lacey.
Well, I wasn't quite old enough for the teased up hair, but when we get to 1984, I've got some photos of some like Farrah Fawcett wings that I can bring out of the dust. But I would say jams. I definitely had a bunch of jams, and I had like half a dozen Swatch watches. You know, you were supposed to wear like all the way up your arm. Yeah. I only wore one at a time, but I had a selection to choose from depending on my outfit.
Gotcha. And I don't see Kyle with any of those, but
oh, come on! Now I was rocking a members only jacket.
Okay, all right, that's good. Okay. That's good.
Nice. And there was a couple of swatches in the mix there, and I would actually still kill for some Converse chucks. I'm just saying. Oh,
original
I
ones.
Actually have my dad's members only jacket from back then. It's in a box somewhere.
Yeah, I think my dad has one somewhere as well. Some popular names in '82 that. Parents were naming their kids, guys, was Jason, Stephanie, Michael, Tiffany, and Brian. So yeah, there you go. All right. Yes. As I said, we are here in 1982. Now we always like to throw this out every time, remind people average cost of a gallon of gas was around 90 cents to $1. Walking and jogging machine was around $200. The GMC 1500 pickup was about $5,400. That was nice, man. That's some cheap stuff here. But guys, we got some stuff in technology. Kyle, you're a fellow computer nerd. The Lotus 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and a quarter inch diskette came out. Mitch developed the Lotus 1, 2, 3 software suite for the IBM PC based on a word processor, spreadsheet, and database. It quickly became the first killer application for the IBM PC and contributed to the success of the PC in business. IBM purchased Lotus in 1995. Floppy disk, baby.
That's a big floppy disk, too.
This is true. All right, next we got coming up some items that were some products that were introduced in 92. We had the and if you look at the picture here, it's kind of going from I guess left to right here, but we had the Nakamichi Dragon stereo cassette receiver tape deck here, which is pretty cool. We also had the Reebok Freestyle there with I guess Velcro closures, the top lace down center, of course. Runts Candy was introduced. And S'mores Grams. Now, I have a big question for you guys here. Of the Runts, which one was your favorite?
The banana.
Yeah, me too. Yeah.
Banana.
Kyle?
I like the grape.
Yeah. I remember at one of the Georgia malls, they had you put a quarter in, it's a candy dispenser. It was nothing but banana Runts. I was like, yes!
Nice.
Yes. So, and S'mores Grams, I remember those were very, very popular. Lots and lots of fun. Next, guys, we got some toys that were introduced in 1982. We have the Other World, and this is going from left to right here. Bendable, posable action figures, glow-in-the-dark weapons. A storybook is included. Kyle, these kind of look like the cheap knockoff Bendham versions of Masters of the Universe.
Or the Dungeons and Dragons figures that were coming out around this time as well.
One was called Ronin, Gyps, and Rady, I think it is. Yeah. We had the micro change. It looked like I'm guessing a micro cassette tape player, but was I'm
using my Zach Morris timeout right now.
Yes, Kyle, what is this?
It's Soundwave.
It is Soundwave.
Soundwave.
Okay.
This is before Transformers was officially licensed over here in the United States. It is a Soundwave, which of course was made to look like a working Walkman.
Yes.
And this particular set, before they changed it when it came over to the United States, is included with the cassette of mini cassette Transformer of Rumble. When this set was released in the United States, they changed it from Rumble to the cassette Eagle Buzzsaw. And the reason why this is so important is because this was the first Transformer I ever owned.
Wow, Kyle, I bet if you still had this mint in box, it'd be worth a pretty penny.
Yeah, just a little, especially in this particular version of it. Yeah, that's worth quite a pretty penny.
Next, we had the Odyssey 2 video game system, manufacturer Magnavox, price of about $150. Combines the strategic scheming of a keyboard-controlled computer with the exciting split-second action of a joystick-controlled game. Kyle, did you ever play this?
You know what? I never played. I had a friend who had the original Odyssey, but never did the Odyssey 2.
Lacey, one of my favorites here is the official Pac-Man and Frogger tabletop arcade games. This is where you can take your arcade games home. Mm-hmm. Manufacturer was Coleco. They're about $60 a piece. Play your favorite arcade game. The higher the score, the harder the game. Records and displays, best score. Each has 2 variations of 1 or 2 players. Choose from Pac-Man or Frogger. Lacey, did you play these?
I had both of these.
Oh, wow.
But it was because we had, what was it? Was it an Atari at that point? I think it was the Atari. The Atari just came out. And so it was like, we weren't allowed to touch the Atari unless my dad was going to like do, he was always kind of like master of the Atari situation. So if we wanted to play Frogger and dad wasn't home, we played these.
Kyle?
These were great, but the most annoying thing about them was the screen was constantly flashing on and off. They were the screens on these were terrible.
Yeah. I didn't own one, but I did play my friends. I want to say it was the Pac-Man one because I was a big Pac-Man guy.
Yeah,
so.
The Pac-Man one was huge.
The 2 other toys to round them out is the Pink and Pretty Barbie and Barbie electronic piano. The doll was $10 and the piano was $20. And we also had, it looked like the precursor to the A-Team van, the Thunder Van Control, radio control, $25. Control with a held hand at T-box transmitter, on, off, fast, slow, and headlight switches on the van. The van turns left and right and forward, goes straight and reverse. Includes 5 pylons to help you test your driving skills. I think it's pretty cool. Yes.
I feel like this is the reason that we had to tell, like, children were told not to get into vans with strangers.
Yeah,
because that's not like, it's a weird toy. It's not like, I mean, van, like when you think about it in general rules, a van isn't like the coolest car ever. You know what I mean? It's not a sports car. It's not a Jeep. It's not a whatever. It just seems very kind of an odd choice.
I knew some jocks and some guys that were van owners.
Yeah, because they could fit a mattress in the back. Let's get real.
Exactly. It's called a shag and wagon for a reason. Kyle, did you have a comment?
Just seeing that reminds me of the days too. There was always somebody in your neighborhood who had a van like this, and it had the crazy mural painted on the side, some kind of fantasy thing or something like that. These vans were like just screaming, "Paint me!" all over the place.
Erin was reminding me when she was growing up in Melbourne, Australia, that they had these panel vans in Australia. I think one was seen in Mad Max, but they were known as shag and wagons, or wagons basically where people lost their virginities. Let's just put it that way.
If this van's a rockin', don't come a knocking.
Exactly. All right, guys, we're going to talk some music news here. Ozzy Osbourne, July, marries his manager Sharon Arden in Maui, Hawaii. Of course, that was a relationship that lasted for quite a while, as she was her manager, and of course eventually then turned into a a television show, I guess, The Osbournes. So there you go.
And isn't she on the View now? Like she's on one of those talk shows, right?
Yeah. She's
The
gone.
Talk or the something.
Yeah. She is a talk show host now. So yeah. A second Prince Trust charity concert is held in the Dominion Theatre in London. Performers include Pete Townsend, Robert Plant, Madness, Phil Collins, Joan Armatrading, and Kate Bush. And in August, in Langenhagen near Hanover, Germany begins the first mass production of the compact disc, a baby. And on August 18th in 1982, 4 streets in Liverpool were named after each of the Beatles. I think Ringo just got a back alley, actually. I think that's what happened. So, yeah. Kyle?
I'm just looking at all of this and just having memory flashbacks here. There's a bunch of the Time Warp here.
August 31st, 82, Ronnie James Dio plays his final show with Black Sabbath. He goes solo, but then he does return with Black Sabbath later in 1992. All right, guys. Billboard Hot 100. As you know, we like to sample a few, and we got some interesting ones here. At number 60, 100 Ways by Quincy Jones. Personality by Carla Bonoff. Love is in Control, Finger on the Trigger by Donna Summer. Think I'm in Love by Eddie Money. Wasted on the Way by Crosby, Stills, and Nash. Hooked on Classics by the Royal Philharmonic Orchestra. Love in the First Degree by Alabama. Why Do Fools Fall in Love by Diana Ross. Caught Up in You by 38 Special. Cool Night by Paul Davis. Do You Believe in Love by Huey Lewis and the News. Keep the Fire Burning by REO Speedwagon. Freeze Frame, Jay Giles Band, 2-hit wonder. Young Turks by Rod Stewart. Love's Been a Little Hard on Me by Juice Newton. Making Love by Roberta Flack. Trouble by Lindsey Buckingham. Private Eyes by Hall & Oates. That Girl, Stevie Wonder. Pac-Man Fever by Buckner and Garcia. And Take It Easy on Me, Little River Band. Those are the top 100 songs positioned between 61 through 41. Lacey, what are a couple of these you digging still?
You know what? I'm going to say that Love's Been a Little Bit Hard on Me and Freeze Frame and Private Eyes. Those are the 3 that I recognize out of all of those songs.
Yeah. What about you, Kyle?
I know, well, Why Do Fools Fall in Love, but that was like a 60s hit before it was this. So,
yeah.
But yeah, I'm really bad with this set. This 20, I'm looking at like 20%. Yeah.
Kyle?
I had some Love in the First Degree because I was caught up in you, because I wondered, do you believe in love? Because it makes me freeze frame, because I searched for the Private Eyes, because you've given me Pac-Man fever and it's driving me crazy.
Stop. Kyle, just give me a couple. Come on, man. Well played, though. Well played.
No, realistically, Private Eyes, and 38 Special, Caught Up in You.
Yeah, great song. Yeah. Pac-Man Fever, guys. I had that 45 single. I played
it on iTunes.
I have no idea. I still don't know what it is. Like, I'm like, okay.
Freeze Frame, Private Eyes, great song. Caught Up in You, great 38 Special song. Yeah, definitely. So, all right, guys. Next, we have got 82 television. What were we watching in 82? Well, we like to highlight the top, I guess we got, what was it, top 30 here. So we got the TV show 9 to 5, inspired probably from some film, I'm guessing. Ran from 82 to 88, which surprised me. Below that, number 14, The Fall Guy premiered on ABC. And next at number 13, we had Newhart, which went from 82 to 90. At number 12, and these are all, of course, all of the Nielsen rankings here, was The Jeffersons, 1975 to 85 it ran. And number 11, right outside the top 10, Monday Night Football, started in 1970. Lacey, of these ones here, which ones were you watching?
Well, The Fall Guy, Fall Guy and Newhart. If it was at my grandparents' house, we would watch Newhart because it was on late. But The Fall Guy was one of my favorites. I will say, I feel like Monday Night Football, and I think at one point the Disney Friday Night whatever was on there somewhere, or the ABC Monday Night movies. I feel like those it's not the same thing every week. So it seems like if it's not a planned series, that should be in a different category. And I'm staging a claim. I'm calling a complaint. I'm lodging a complaint about Monday Night Football. I mean, not that people shouldn't enjoy football, but that's not the same thing every week.
It is, but it goes by ratings, and it claimed a spot and kind of stuck there. So yeah, definitely. Kyle, what were some of your favorites of these mentioned?
Come on, The Fall Guy, Lee Majors, of course. Too, I guess got shout out too because Ryan Gosling is doing a remake of The Fall Guy, and the cast for that is shaping up to be phenomenal.
Well, who's in the Heather Thomas role? Do you know?
I'm not real sure. They haven't announced who's doing what, but I know they cast Jessica Henwick into it. Of course,
okay.
You know, the lovely Colleen Wing from the Marvel shows.
I hope that they can do tribute to the theme song because that Fall Guy has one of the best theme songs. I just want to throw it out there.
And Kevin, as football fans, tell me if I'm wrong, but were we in the era of turn out the lights, the party's over with Monday Night Football at this were we still getting a little Don Meredith action on Monday Night Football at this time?
Possibly. I was watching it, but I wasn't paying attention enough to remember that then. So it might be. I'm not sure. Yeah, good call. Lacey. Yes, Lacey.
Emily Blunt.
Emily Blunt.
Yeah.
Nice.
Emily Blunt, Aaron Taylor Johnson, Ryan Gosling, and Stephanie Sue.
All right. Crushing on Emily Blunt. Love it.
Mm-hmm.
A couple things, of course, that were debuting this year on TV, or excuse me, during this time in July and August. America This Morning. ABC started in 1982. And Filthy Rich on CBS. Only lasted one season, 82 to 83. TV shows that were ending this year: Lewis and Clark, which started in 1981. So that just got one season. And some show called McLean's Law also started in 81 and ended in 82. That started James Arnaz, Marshall Colt, George DeCenzio, McLean's Law. Jeez, yeah. I don't remember those at all. Jeez. Any of you guys remember those?
I vaguely remember McLean's Law.
Yeah. Gabe Kaplan was in Lewis and Clark. So anyway. All right, guys. We're going to get into some births here. We got some celebrity births here. Through July and August, we have Hillary Burton, Sophia Bush. They were on a show together. There you go. One Tree Hill. Priyanka Chopra, Jared Padalecki, Paul Wesley,
Yay.
Elizabeth Moss, Anna Paquin, Brad Renfro, Martin Starr, Yvonne Strahovski, Abby Cornish, Devin Aoki, Sebastian Stan, Cam Giagante, Erica Christensen, and Jameel Walker-Smith. Man, these are all 40-year-olds, guys.
These are some heavy hitters in this list here.
Yeah, and this is all from July through August. Lacey, any thoughts here? Any favorites here?
Well, should be Hillary Burton Morgan, firstly. Sophia Bush, she has 2 or 3 last names extra at this point. But Jared Padalecki is going to be my favorite off this list. And Sebastian Stan.
Are those your crushes? Because I got a couple of crushes.
I think they're fantastic actors. I love Martin Starr as well. Hillary Burton has started doing like podcasting and stuff. They have a show where they do it, but it's kind of political, so it's not really my
right
thing. Love Sophia Bush. She's still doing. She's on one of the Chicago shows, right? Chicago PD or Chicago.
I think so, yeah. Kyle, got any crushes on here, Kyle?
Priyanka. Come on, Priyanka Chopra. Jonas. She's a Jonas now.
Yeah,
so.
yeah.
Elizabeth Moss. Always a good thing. And who doesn't want to hang out with Sebastian Stan? Come on, let's be real.
True. My 2 crushes on here are Hillary Burton and Devin Aoki.
Yes, Devin Aoki is.
I don't even know who that is. Who's Devin Aoki?
she was in the DOA movie, if I remember correctly. But she was in the what do you call it?
Was she in Sucker Punch?
Yes, Sucker Punch, I believe, and then
I think Sin City.
Sin City, yeah, she did the Sin City, yep, and then she was in Fast and Furious 2 as well. So yeah.
Okay, gotcha.
All right, guys, we did have one major celebrity death during this time. Mr. Henry Fonda, born in 1905, passed away. So yeah. All right, guys. Before we move forward, though, we got one last thing before we take the break. Is we have some celebrity film debuts. Angelina Jolie in Looking to Get Out, Kevin Kline in Sophie's Choice, Amy Madigan in Love Child, Michael Madsen in Against All Hope, Rebecca De Mornay in One from the Heart, Kyle crushing on Rebecca there, and Eddie Murphy in 48 Hours. So there you go. All right.
Michael Madsen is still like one of my favorites.
Nice. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
All right, guys, we're going to take a quick break here from Time Warp and let you know what's happening, what other great podcasts are happening on the network. And we're going to get back talking about the movies. 1982. We'll be right back. Thank you for listening. We hope you're enjoying this podcast. Here are the other great shows on the Fandom Podcast Network. Culture Clash, where we discuss the latest in entertainment and pop culture. Blood of Kings, our show covering the entire Highlander universe. Couch Potato Theater, we celebrate our favorite movies. And Time Warp, our fandom flashback show discussing a year in movies and our favorite retro movie, TV, and pop culture topics. Good Evening, discussing all things Alfred Hitchcock. Hair Metal Podcast, we cover the rock metal music of the 80s and early 90s. Type 40, a Doctor Who podcast, discussing the time-traveling Doctor Who universe. Lethal Mullet, an action film podcast covering the 80s, 90s, and beyond. Also, check out the Lethal Mullet Network for more great podcasts. What a Piece of Junk, our Star Wars podcast. Making Treks, a Star Trek podcast with a deep dive into the final frontier. The Fandom Show, our Fandom Podcast Network live YouTube show discussing the hottest topics in fandom. The True Believers MCU podcast discussing the Marvel Cinematic and Television Universe. Union Federation, our Star Trek and the Orville show. And we're proud to welcome the BQN Network to the Fandom Podcast Network. Please visit our friends on the BQN Network, a Star Trek Universe podcast that also includes your favorite topics, movies, history, superheroes, and more. You can find the Fandom Podcast Network on YouTube. The Fandom Podcast Network is also on all major podcast platforms. The Fandom Podcast Network audio master feed is on Podbean at fpnet.podbean.com. You can find the Fandom Podcast Network on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. You can email us at fandompodcastnetwork@gmail.com. Thank you so much for listening, and remember, respect others and enjoy your fandom. All right, welcome back to Time Warp 1982, 40th anniversary. We are discussing the movies in pop culture, and we're talking about the movies in July and August. Now, we did want to mention that we do have some films that are, these here are the top grossing movies in 1982, and we'll talk a little bit more about that because there's a couple that we're going to discuss that are on this list. And we do have some that are on the cutting room floor that we will discuss also later. Kyle.
I am just really excited about this movie because I love The Secret of Nimh.
Well, okay, so the first one that we're talking about here in July 2nd, Secret of Nimh. To save her ill son, a field mouse must seek the aid of a colony of rats to whom she has a deeper link than she has ever suspected. Kyle, this is directed by John Bluth, stars Elizabeth Hartman, Derek Jacobi, Dom DeLuise, Shan Doherty, Will Wheaton, and Tom Hatton. Give it to me. Why do you like this one?
For one, this was the first movie I can remember animated that had a more adult feel to it. It didn't have that Disney feel. It is absolutely beautifully animated. It is, in my opinion, to this day, Don Bluth's best animated feature film. The storyline is amazing. The voice acting is incredible, and it's one of those films that, to me, just every time I watch it, I just get so fully engrossed in it. It's just amazing, the visuals of it. From the owl to the rats of Nimh to Mrs. Brisby to everything. And great voice acting. Dom DeLuise is phenomenal in it. A lot of young stars playing Mrs. Brisby's children in this film too. So,
yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, Lacey, your thoughts on The Secret of Nimh?
I remember when I saw this the first time, it scared me. Like it had some dark stuff in it. Then 10 years later, when everyone was like, "Oh my God, Secret of Nimh, we should see it." I probably saw it a million times on cable. But my favorite thing about Don Bluth is that he actually, he was the head character animator for Robin Hood, the Disney Robin Hood. And Robin Hood was my favorite character that he ever did.
Gotcha. I think a lot of people's favorites too would probably be An American Tail. The Land Before Time was probably one of my favorites. Pete's Dragon, of course. So Anastasia, Titan AE, Kyle, remember that?
Yeah,
Titan
I
AE,
remember
so
that, but marketed huge back in the 90s.
Yeah,
Yeah,
definitely.
Joss Whedon actually did the punch up on Titan AE.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
All right, guys. Next we have a tiny little film here. Oh, yeah, Tron. A world inside a computer where a man has never before now. Computer hackers abducted in digital world and forced to participate in games where his only chance to escape is with the help of a heroic security program. Starring Jeff Bridges, Bruce Boxleitner, David Warner, Cindy Morgan, Dan Shore, and Peter Jurassic. Kyle, we love this film. I know we've done a couch potato theater on it. We're looking at probably maybe revisiting it and doing another one. We'll see. Your thoughts on Tron? Rematch.
Some rematch. One of my all-time favorite films. The whole world of Tron is one of my favorite things that Disney has ever done. I remember I did not get to see this movie in the theater, which it never made it to the theaters in Alaska, but I had some friends who had a video rental store, and when they got it in, they just automatically brought it, like 2 days before they were even supposed to have it out, they brought it over to my house so I could watch it. And it was like really hard for me to give them the cassette back. This movie was groundbreaking for so many reasons, and just I can watch this movie at any time. This is the ultimate definition. I do own that, so yes.
I'm holding the Blu-ray app. I also have the DVD 2 set too. Yeah.
But no, just everything about this film, and it's got a well-deserved cult classic status, and I think it's even bigger than that. I mean, the effects were groundbreaking at the time. Just so much to love about Tron. Greetings, programs.
Lacey, your thoughts on Tron?
I dug it. I know that there has been a big kind of argument as to what the firsts were. This one, so Tron had the first fully CGI vehicle, but it was in a CGI background. So apparently that lost them some credit of some sort when The Last Starfighter came out, because they had the first fully CGI vehicle, but it was in a real life background. So but Tron definitely set the pace for getting that put together, and we wouldn't have had The Last Starfighter if we hadn't had Tron. So that's one of the many reasons I like Tron, is because it led towards the CGI for The Last Starfighter.
Yeah, I love this film. I loved seeing it in the big screen. I would love to see it on the big screen again. And it's funny too, some trivia I have on this I find interesting was the film was disqualified from receiving an Academy Award nomination for special effects because the Academy felt at the time that using computers was cheating. And of course it had the film was a commercial failure. The arcade video game based on it proved to be a tremendous hit and actually outgrossed the film, which is kind of funny. And so it's funny too, many Disney animators refused to work on this movie because they feared that the computers would put them out of business. In fact, 22 years later, Disney closed its hand-drawn animation studio in favor of CG animation. Hand-drawn animation was ultimately resumed at Disney at the behest of a new creative director, John Lasseter, also head of Pixar, ironically a computer animated company. And a wardrobe malfunction happened early in test screening, guys. Jeff Bridges produced too much of a bulge in the crotchular area in the computer outfit, which is why he was forced to wear that kind of dance belt to conceal it. That's why he looks a little different, guys, because dude had stuff. So there you go.
I do like the trivia you have here too, Kevin. To inspire the actors, arcade games were placed on the production set and could be played during downtime. Jeff Bridges was apparently the most adept at the games and found it hard to tear himself away from the games to shoot a scene.
Hey, he was in character, man. He's pretty much playing himself. So yeah. All right, guys, I'm gonna need your help with this movie coming up right here. Six Pack. A race car driver is driving to a race in a motorhome with his race car in a trailer. His car gets stripped of parts. He ends up with 6 orphan kids on his way to the race. Stars Kenny Rogers, Diane Lane, Aaron Gray, and Anthony Michael Hall. I've never seen this film, guys. I apparently maybe need to. Lacey, I need to start with you on this.
I love this movie. It's one of my favorites. I've always loved Kenny Rogers. I loved his music. I loved his movies. Everything. It's fine. Like anything he did was like fantastic. This was my introduction to Anthony Michael Hall. So basically it's like a ragtag kind of Oliver situation, like the Artful Dodger thing. It's like the pack of kids are like little thieves, and Diane Lane is the oldest. She's 18. So she's all like using her sexy little self, trying to distract people while the kids just like strip the cars and sell them for parts. And that's how they survive because they're orphaned. And of course, Kenny Rogers, doesn't take it. He goes and he finds them and ends up using them as his pit crew.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Kyle, Six Pack.
Love this. I'm with Lacey. I love this film. The height of Kenny Rogers, I think in the 80s at this point, the only actual feature theatrical film he ever made. He made several made-for-TV movies based off The Gambler, but this was the only one he did that actually went into theaters. A lot of young stars in this, Diane Lane, Anthony Michael Hall. This was just a fun movie, and you forget, and you see it even when you watch the trailer for Six Pack, the charisma Kenny Rogers had and what what he drew into people. I mean, he's got the great classic name here. You got his Brewster Baker is his character's name, who's a race car driver. Also, Kevin, not only is Diane Lane in this, Aaron Gray is in this film.
Yeah, alone, I should probably see this. Huge fan of Aaron Gray and Diane Lane. She's getting some burn in some films during these early 80s here. We'll talk more about that later. But also, this was Anthony Michael Hall's film premiere. And about a year after this movie was released, a television series pilot based on this movie was filmed, starring Don Johnson in the Kenny Rogers role of Brewster Baker. I think he went on to something a little more popular, I'm just going to say. So, yeah. So, guys, should I watch this, do you think? Think I should make some time for this? And find it?
Wasn't Tom Savini the bad guy?
I believe so.
Yeah. I mean, it's got it was Terry Kaiser.
That's right.
Terry Kaiser. But yeah, it's fantastic. Yeah, you should definitely put this on your list to go back and watch before our next outing. Yeah, I think that and it's nice and fun and light and upbeat, so it's not one that you have to like struggle through.
Nice. If anyone knows where it's streaming, I'll try to stream it too, because it does sound like fun. All right, guys. Next, we have Summer Lovers. A young American couple and a French woman engage in a threesome in the Greek islands. Directors Randall Kleiser, starring Peter Gallagher, Daryl Hannah, and Valerie Quennessen. I think that's how you say the name. So yeah, guys, I wanted to put this in here because I thought it was interesting, especially the topic of it as well. And this was Valerie's final film before her death, March 19, 1989, at the age of 31. So she died young, unfortunately. And the villa where Michael and Kathy stay is located in Oia Santorini. If I'm pronouncing that incorrectly, I apologize. It was purchased by a couple in 1987 and now exists as a gift shop named Summer Lovers. Lacey, have you seen this?
Yeah, I have the Blu-ray. It's interesting. It's not technically a threesome. It's more of a V, because I think it was kind of a standards and practice situation where they never actually wanted the women to kiss because that wouldn't be appropriate, because the whole being gay in 1982 was deadly for many reasons. So basically it's the couple. It's really kind of an exploration of jealousy more than anything else.
Okay.
And the concept of French, European, they just don't look at being sexual as something that needs to be just between one or two, just between one couple or two people.
Interesting.
But it was a good movie.
Well, Valerie Quennessen played a working archaeologist. The production secured an unprecedented permission to film at an actual dig at Akrotiri and presumed lost city of Atlantis. Instructed by a real archaeologist, she is set to work before the cameras in an area of the site selected for light and production values, Quenessen had hardly started when, much of the joy of everyone, she uncovered several pieces of a 3,500-year-old pottery. They were turned in and added to the scientific collection. Kyle, have you ever seen this?
I have never seen this, but I watched the trailer for it, and the fact that Peter Gallagher actually got a paycheck for this, I'm quite jealous. Because obviously,
Well
Daryl
said.
Hannah being gorgeous, and Valley Quenessen, who I loved in Conan, just
Nice.
absolutely gorgeous, and such a crime that she was taken at such a young age from us. But yeah, I watched the trailer and was like, yeah, Peter Gallagher is one of those actors who's like, yeah, there's just some movies that he shouldn't have ever got a paycheck for because just getting cast in the role was more than enough.
All right, guys. Next, we've got The Best Little Whorehouse in Texas. A town sheriff and regular patron of a historical whorehouse fights to keep it running when a television reporter targets it as the Devil's Playhouse. Stars Burt Reynolds, Dolly Parton, Dom DeLuise. Funny little trivia I wanted to start off with, guys. While filming the ending scene, Burt Reynolds got a double hernia from picking up Dolly Parton. Double hernia. He often joked to Dolly that he'd think of her every time that he got the pang of pain. And the chicken house, the chicken ranch house, went on to be the Firefly residence and House of 1,000 Corpses in 2003. Lacey, your thoughts on Best Little Whorehouse in Texas?
I love Best Little Whorehouse in Texas. It was great. It's a musical. It's super fun. I have the Blu-ray. They did a re-release for it. And this is the first time I heard the song "I Will Always Love You."
Yeah. I had seen portions of it from here and there, and so I kind of had forgotten what it was. But I really like the chemistry though between Burt and Dolly. Dolly's just so darn cute. Kyle, thoughts on Best Little Whorehouse in Texas?
Burt Reynolds, and Dolly Parton are one of those movie pairings that always just had instant chemistry. It's like Dolly Parton's always one of the leading ladies I think of when I think of Burt Reynolds too. And I mean, this is just a fun movie. They've done musicals on it, everything like that. And it's just for its time, they had fun with it and they enjoyed it. And Burt Reynolds, Burt Reynolds was having a blast on that set.
Yeah, definitely. And in terms of box office, this movie was the most successful movie musical of the 1980s. And film went over budget because of various production problems. Several directors came and went. The script was always being rewritten. And Dolly Parton wrote several more songs that were eventually included. So I think it's just a fun film. And I actually wouldn't mind seeing like a theater production of this. I think it'd be great. So, yeah. All right, guys. The next movie is one of my favorites from this list. And it's one that I kind of discovered while I was doing this research for this. I'd never seen this before, never even heard of it before. And that is The Challenge, an action movie starring Scott Glenn, Tashira Foon, and Monica Benz. Rick, a down-and-out American boxer, is hired to transport a sword to Japan, unaware that the whole thing is set up in a bitter blood feud between two brothers, one who follows the traditional path of the samurai and the other is a nasty businessman. At the behest of the businessman, Rick undertakes samurai training from the other brother, but joins his cause. He also becomes romantically involved, of course, with the samurai's daughter. Directed by John Frankenheimer, and this is the first lead feature for Scott Glenn. And I was wondering, like, why hasn't this movie gotten more attention? And because Scott Glenn is, first of all, awesome. It's got great fighting. It's bloody violent as well. And I think the music was also done by, oh God, what's his name? I'm forgetting now. But it's not James Horner, Goldstein. Forgetting his name.
Jerry Goldsmith.
Thank you, Jerry Goldsmith. Yes. But I was really surprised with the fighting in this film, the choreography, the fighting, and like I said, it gets nasty towards the end. And there's kind of like a James Bond villain ending to it as well. There's a big building they have to kind of sneak into. Scott Glenn was in great shape in this. Also shot on location, which was great. I highly recommend this movie if you're into action, and it does follow the trope of the American guy getting involved in the Japanese culture. Of course, Shogun happened as well. Any American ninja film, Kyle. But there's just something a little bit different about this that really kind of, for me, just sold it for me. And Toshiro Mifune was great in this. Kyle, had you heard of The Challenge?
I actually had not until I saw it on the notes for here, and I have actually found it streaming, so it's going to be one I'm going to be checking out before our next time warp.
Do you remember where you found it streaming?
YouTube.
YouTube, awesome, perfect. Yeah.
But I'm a big Scott Glenn fan, so I will be definitely checking this out. And there was another interesting piece of trivia with this one too, Kevin.
Yes, billed as Steve Seagal, later an actor and movie star, Steven Seagal worked on this movie as a technical advisor and martial arts coordinator. So yeah, guys, a young Steve Seagal worked on this.
I bet you that was pre-ponytail.
Yeah. As I mentioned, Lacey, this is the first lead role in feature film for Scott Glenn. Ever heard of this film?
I had not. I haven't checked it out. When I saw the list for this week, I knew I was going to have several movies that I was going to be chiming in on, and so I didn't add any more to my list just because I didn't want to overrun the conversation.
Right, gotcha. Well, highly recommend it. This is one of my favorites from this block. Very underrated action film. And Toshiro Mifune, of course, was a student of martial arts. And you can definitely tell by watching this movie how it's used. And they filmed it on the ancient, in a scene here of the Sokujuji Temple, which had remained unchanged for several hundred years. Yeah. All right, guys, let's get into some 80s comedies here. We've got Zapped. Yeah, trailer. A high school science nerd gains telekinetic powers after a laboratory accident and uses them for revenge upon bullies. Starring Scott Baio, Willie Ames, Robert Mandan, and Heather Thomas. Following the box office success of Porky's in 1981, parts of this film were refilmed to increase the amount of nudity and to intentionally earn an R rating. When you watch the ending prom scene, it's very obvious that they've done that. I think I saw the heavily edited version of this when it went to TV. Lacey, your thoughts on Zapped?
Okay, first of all, Zapped on regular TV was probably only like 11 minutes long.
Yes.
There's legitimately boobs in every scene. I mean, every scene. It's one of those funny, completely couldn't make it now. It's just 100% inappropriate in all ways now. But it's fun to look back and see what we were allowed to think was funny in 1982.
Didn't age well for you?
There's really nothing else you can say about it. It's funny. It's completely inappropriate and not PC at all. But yeah.
Yeah, this is true. Kyle, your thoughts on Zapped?
If I'm remembering correctly, and I could be wrong, this was actually a movie that gained steam in popularity later because of Charles in Charge.
Yes.
Which, of course, Scott Baio and Willie Ames, that was a huge show, and a lot of people sought this out after Charles in Charge was out in game ratings because they liked the team of Scott Baio and Willie Ames. I don't think a lot of people were probably surprised in what they got with this film with these two. Yeah, this was definitely a movie that definitely tried to ride that Porky's train a little bit, and say what you will, Scott Baio and Willie Ames, a successful pairing in Hollywood for a good number of years in the 80s. So
this had one of the tropes too. Of course, you had Heather Thomas playing the hot girl, of course, and then you had the cute nerdy girl Bernadette, played by Felice Shatter. I think is how you say her last name. And then I was trying to remember where I remembered Robert Mandan from. I think he was the principal in this, and I remember him from playing Three's a Crowd, the father. This was the not successful Three's Company offshoot that Ritter did, where he finally married a girl, and the girl's father, of course, was played by Mandan as well. So
Gotcha.
yeah, but this is interesting because of a couple things here. The actress Heather Thomas had serious reservations about filming her nude scenes for what was going to be an actress motion picture debut. And in post-production, apparently, they used a body double without her knowledge for the topless scene at the prom and pasted her head onto a topless body double in a photograph in the movie. These changes prompted Thomas to file a complaint with the Screen Actors Guild. This broke SAG rules as an actor or actress as right of approval over any body double that may represent them. As such, a disclaimer at the end of the film was added to read, "A double was used for Miss Thomas in her nude scene and in the photograph." So, yeah, not cool. Yeah, Lacey.
And there were a lot of things were happening right around this time where they were like, as far as this lawsuit kind of led to, or the complaint, I don't think it went to a lawsuit, but like the complaint went to a lot of other women saying, "Hey guys,
yeah,
we all know that ladies have boobs. Like, let's just calm it down a little bit."
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it kind of, I mean, they tried to do a second one in 1990, Zapped again. And just in that 8-year period, everybody was kind of like, "Nope, that's not cool anymore."
Yeah,
But it flopped real hard.
There was a Zendaya movie that came out for Disney called Zapped, and it was a different take on it where she had a special app on her phone that she could use to control guys and do some funny things with and stuff like that. So yeah. By the way, Scott Baio and Willie Ames were both 21 during filming, while Heather Locklear was 24. Only Felice Schachter, the nerdy love interest, was still a high school student when the film was shot. In fact, she missed her own prom to shoot the prom sequence in the film. So, Kyle.
You have to put $1 in the jar because you just said Heather Locklear instead of Heather Thomas.
Ah!
Yeah, thank you.
Wait a minute. Where's that dollar going? I don't know. Anyway, yes. Heather Thomas. Thank you. All right, guys. Next film that we got, Officer and a Gentleman. Young man has signed up for Navy Aviation Officer Candidate School. He's a Navy brat who has a bad attitude problem. Gunnery Sergeant Emil Foley is there to train and evaluate Mr. Zach Mayo, and will clearly find Zach wanting. Zach meets Paula, a girl who has little beyond family, but must decide what it is he wants to do with his life. Starring Richard Gere, Deborah Winger, David Keith, and Louis Gossett Jr., who won an Oscar for this, if I remember correctly. Lacey, your thoughts on Officer and a Gentleman?
It's super, super dramatic. Super dramatic.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
I mean, it was a lot. I remember seeing it back then and being like, "Ugh, really? Ugh. Okay." It was tough. It's not my favorite. Drama's never been my favorite. That's all. I don't really.
Kyle, your thoughts on Officer and Gentleman?
I hate doing it because I love Louis Gossett Jr., but this movie also has a very classic story. You've got this in the notes, Kevin, but can I bring
Yeah, go do it.
Okay, first of all, when you hear the name Don Simpson, you usually attach the name Jerry Bruckheimer to that,
and a big table of, and probably a big table of cocaine.
Yeah, exactly. That's what. Which Don Simpson was probably on at this point when he was demanding that the ballad "Up Where We Belong" be cut from the film, saying that song is no good. It isn't a hit. Yeah, the song later became the #1 song on the Billboard charts and won the Academy Award for Best Song. He wanted "On the Wings of Love" by Jeffrey Osborne to be in this movie instead. Thankfully, they didn't listen to coked up Don Simpson for this particular music piece.
And Taylor Hackford, I mean, he's a fantastic director. He's done a million things. I mean, I loved Against All Odds. There's a ton of different stuff that he did. White Nights. I mean, come on. Yeah. But everything he does is like very dramatic. There's never like a single funny, happy line.
Yeah, I've seen this maybe once in portions of it. To me, it's a tough watch. It is very dramatic, as you say, Lacey and Kyle. There's moments I'm like, but I could see how at the time it hit a chord with people. But this is not a rewatchable. Definitely not for me. So yeah. All right, guys. Next movie we've got is Forced Vengeance, starring Chuck Norris, Mary Louise Weller, Camilla Griggs. Josh Randall works for the owner of a Hong Kong-based casino and is treated like a son. When the owner is approached by someone who's connected and wants to buy his casino, the man refuses the offer. The owner and son are killed. Josh then gets the man's daughter and tries to protect her. Later, Josh is pursued by the police, and anyone who helps is killed. Josh tries to get the people who did it, and of course he does. Guys, I've been trying to catch up on Chuck Norris films that I have never got around to actually seeing. And this was one I had not seen. So I found a copy of it and I watched it. I actually found this one at a thrift store. So it was cool. I would say the cool thing about this film is actually it's shot part in China and Macau as well. So there's some great locations in this. But for a Chuck Norris film, the fighting scenes are really bad and badly choreographed, in my opinion. But he does get a little drama acting going on here. It's not a great film. It was originally filmed as The Jade Jungle, but MGM later changed it to Force Vengeance to make it sound more like an action film. And this is one of the numerous collaborations that star Chuck Norris and brother stunt coordinator Aaron Norris worked on as well. Kyle, have you seen this film?
It's been a good while since I've seen this film, but I remember this film in particular because this was kind of at an interesting point for Chuck because he was getting famous and he was really hit, but he hadn't hit with Invasion USA yet. He hadn't hit with Delta Force and things along that nature. But he was at this point where he thought he was a big enough star he could kind of force his hand and control the fight sequences. And as you said, Kevin, not some of the best fight sequences for Chuck Norris. No. He hadn't quite gotten that grip of doing a movie fight sequence.
They're very clumsy. The fight scenes are very clumsy in this. So yeah. So Lacey, sorry, go ahead.
I just want to say, I think this is one of these interesting films that you kind of use as in the growth of Chuck Norris as an action star.
Yeah, I would say that's true. Yeah, but like I said, it was shot on location, so it was cool to see part of that. So, Lacey, did you ever see Force Vengeance?
I'm like 80% sure I've seen every Chuck Norris movie, but I'm also 80% sure that you can really just drop into any Chuck Norris movie at any point in time and know what's going to happen. Not in a bad way. We love these formulaic action flicks and that there's something about it. And you're watching to see those cool, fun, new, what are they going to do new with the action sequences? Yeah. I don't remember enough about it. I know I've seen one of his movies that was shot in a casino. That doesn't mean there's not 3 or 4 of them.
It's one that you can miss. I mean, it's not one of his better ones, but I did find it interesting.
Yeah, so. I feel like I've seen it. I can't really comment.
Okay, no worries. The next film, Night Shift. Guess what, guys? I just saw this for the first time recently. Yep. A morgue attendant is talked into running a brothel at his workplace after a deceased pimp is sent there. However, the pimp's killers don't look too kindly on the new business, nor does the morgue's owner. Directed by Ron Howard, stars Henry Winkler, Michael Keaton, Shelley Long, and of course, Clint Howard. First major Hollywood studio picture directed by Ron Howard. And early screen roles for Kevin Costner and Shannon Doherty. Costner is a frat boy in the morgue party scene, a non-speaking part, and Doherty plays a bluebell like a Girl Scout in the elevator scene with one line. And guys, this is the breakout and first starring role of Michael Keaton on here. And Ron Howard has a cameo as an annoying saxophone player on the subway. Guys, I really enjoyed this film. I know this was probably, Kyle, on a lot of the late night or HBO pay channel stuff. And I didn't have those channels growing up. That's why it went by me. I've heard of this film. I'm really kind of surprised how much I enjoyed it. It is a fun film.
Yeah, it is an absolute blast. I love this movie. Michael Keaton is phenomenal in this movie. Of course, it's got some great music in it as well. Fun story about this movie, though. Henry Winkler had to fight to get this role. The studio did not want the Fonz in this role, and this is at a point when Henry Winkler was desperate to break out of being the Fonz. And
it's true. Yeah.
Ron Howard kind of went to bat for Henry Winkler here, got him in, and he's phenomenal in this movie. The studio loved him in it, and hence it really helped Henry Winkler move on from being completely typecast as the Fonz. And I mean, him and Keaton have such wonderful chemistry in this film. It's amazing. This is one I haven't watched in a while, and I actually want to revisit it. But yeah, Brian Grazer. I was just gonna say Brian Grazer had to be sold on Henry Winkler for this.
True. And by when you were talking about that, it reminded me that how cute Shelley Long was in this. She was just so adorable. She was funny. Lacey, your thoughts on Night Shift?
You know what? I loved it. I liked that they went with, like you said, Ron Howard. I mean, he was kind of that kind of darling just because, his parents were in the industry and everything else. But, he was also trying to break out of that goody two shoes kind of vibe, because he went from being Opie to being, on Happy Days. And it was just, he was trying to do something that was a little bit more adult, and he succeeded. But it's just one of those kind of fun, kind of like, it reminds me of the same tone as Bachelor Party.
Yeah.
Just very much like
one of my favorites.
Yeah, you get that like 10-minute setup, and then all hell breaks loose, and then you get the 10-minute wrap up. Like that's and everything in the middle is fantastic. And that sometimes it doesn't make sense, sometimes it goes a little bit too far, but you're like, this is hilarious.
Shot in location too in New York. It was cool to see some of those scenes, but that, like I said, there's just certain movies that got past me because of the not having access to those pay channels. And when VHS came around, I was a little more selective at time, but I'm glad I finally got around to seeing that. All right, guys, next that we've got is Cheech and Chong. Things are tough all over. Cheech and Chong are hired to drive a limo from Chicago to Las Vegas by two shady Arabs, also played by Cheech and Chong. Unbeknownst to them, $5 million of dirty money is being stuffed throughout the car. I've seen several of their films. This was one that got past me. I have it somewhere, debating whether or not to watch it. It's filmed apparently in Las Vegas. So it'll be interesting to see Vegas in the early 80s. Kyle, did you remember seeing this film at all?
This is a point for me, and I think for a lot of people. I think Cheech and Chong films were definitely heavy either in the late night rotation on cable or through video rental more than they were in the theaters. I remember seeing this one on, I think it was probably HBO late at night. Well, at one point, the Cheech and Chong movies, even when I was in high school in the late 80s, early 90s, these were always like a late night watch for the high school students and things like that. And, they're funny. I mean, they are what they are. You know exactly what they are, but you can never really go wrong with a Cheech and Chong movie. I'm a big fan of Cheech Marin's comedy anyway, whether he's with Tommy Chong or not. But yeah, these are fun, and they are what they are.
Lacey, you Cheech and Chong person?
It's funny. I didn't really, because again, in 82, I was 9. So Cheech and Chong was not okay for me to be watching when I was 9.
Well, of course you'd watch it later on VHS or pay channels later.
I remember seeing Yellowbeard, like when I was like 15 or something, and being like, okay, those folks are crazy. I need to see everything that everyone in this movie has been in. And so I know that I've gone back and watched all of them. I think the first Cheech and Chong movie I saw was The Corsican Brothers. Gotcha. But I think, again, it's kind of one of those things, you can drop Cheech and Chong into any situation, you know exactly how it's going to play out.
Yeah. They're just fun to watch together. They're a great comedy pair. I think Up in Smoke might have been the first one that I saw. So yeah. Okay, guys, next film we've got is Tex, starring Matt Dillon. After their mother dies and their father leaves them, teenage brothers Tex and Mason McCormick struggle to make it on their own. Directed by Tim Hunter, based on a novel by S.E. Hinton, starring Matt Dillon, Jim Metzler, Meg Tilly, and Emilio Estevez. Guys, I feel like I'm a little out on this one, but I'm just remembering it, or I forgot that S.E. Hinton is a woman. Didn't know that, or had forgotten about that. But this was one of these. S.E. Hinton was one of those I do remember learning about. And I have a feeling we might have watched this in school for a project. I think it's a PG film, so I think it was safe but I have a vague memory of watching this. And so I don't, of course, as I mentioned, I had watched The Outsiders for the first time recently. And then there was Rumblefish that came out also in 83 with The Outsiders, which I haven't seen yet. Jim Metzler was 30 years old when he was cast as a 17-year-old Mason McCormick, by the way. And this is Emilio Estevez feature film debut. Lacey, your thoughts on Tex?
I think I didn't see this for quite a while afterwards. I remember one night I had a friend who was really, really into Matt Dillon, and we did like a sleepover, and we had to watch like everything was Matt Dillon. So it was like Little Darlings, The Outsiders, Tex, and The Flamingo Kid. And
Yeah.
And he was very good at doing Matt Dillon. Matt Dillon is great. Like he had kind of a typecast situation for that frame, that time frame.
It's kind of like the way Vince Vaughn's himself in all of his films, sort of. Matt Dillon kind of does that a little bit as well.
I agree, but like, you know, you hit like the early 90s and all of a sudden Matt Dillon started acting. I mean,
yeah, it's true. Yeah.
Not being mean, but like Matt Dillon had a vibe, and then all of a sudden he started like checking into other kind of roles. But
yeah.
Kyle,
thoughts on Tex? Have you seen it?
I'm like you. I think I saw it in school at some point. This is an interesting time though, because this is when Disney was doing a lot of movies. People didn't realize Disney was doing this movie.
Right.
This one falls into that. The only thing I always remember about Tex though, more than anything, is it never failed. It seemed like no matter what video store I went into, I saw Tex on the shelf. It was just, it's just like, well, I can't escape this movie. It's haunting me, or something. But yeah, I agree with Lacey. This is a classic at the time frame Matt Dillon film. Following the typecast he kind of got caught in for most of the 80s, and like you guys talked about, he really started acting in the 90s. I remember him in the Nicole Kidman movie To Die For, and I thought he was brilliant in that. But yeah, I mean, this is typical Matt Dillon.
Something About Mary for me is my favorite Matt Dillon.
That's
up there. So
I loved him.
All right, guys.
In and Out.
What's that?
I loved him in the movie In and Out, where he did the take on Brad Pitt accidentally outing his high school drama teacher.
Was that the Kevin Kline film?
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Okay, cool. All right, guys. Next one is another film that I actually didn't see until just recently. I'd heard about it, and that is The Last American Virgin. Pizza delivery boy Gary, Loudmouth David, and Hunky Rick are three high school students about to lose their virginity any way they can. Gary falls for the transfer student Karen, who gets involved with Rick. Guys, I wish I'd known more about this film earlier, because this stars one of my 80s movie crushes, and that is Diane Franklin. Better Off Dead, of course. One of the hot, bodacious princesses from Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure. And boy, she is so adorable in this film, but boy, she breaks the kid's heart, thus breaking mine as well. And Diane Franklin, by the way, is deaf in her left ear, which is why you see her walk very briefly with her moped. Sorry, I'm reading it here. While she, with her moped, and she never really rides it. When you're in any way hearing impaired, it messes with your balance to where you're riding a bicycle or a moped or a motorbike is impossible. She said that while on the set. And I had never thought about that, but interesting enough. Anyway, your thoughts on this? Let's start with you, Kyle. Last American Virgin.
I'll be honest, it's been a very long time since I've seen this. This was another one I saw on cable, but one of the things I do remember about this is obviously Diane Franklin, like you, Kevin, bodacious princess. Come on, let's hear. But this also had an amazing musical score to it and soundtrack. I mean, you even look on just on the movie poster itself and see, I mean, those are all huge bands in the 80s. And I just, so this is kind of one of those ones. It's a great sample of a 1980s film, but I think it's kind of lost in the shuffle behind another movie we're going to talk about here shortly, Fast Times at Ridgemont High, One of the Guys, and a few others. It's just kind of at a level just below those, so it kind of gets lost in the shuffle.
Lacey, your thoughts on The Last American Virgin?
I'm actually ordering it on Amazon right now because I have not seen it. I have.
Gotcha.
I had no idea. For some reason, I missed this one in the list when I was making my list of ones to watch. But I will let you know next time, because this is one that I'm ordering right now.
Nice. Well, a lot of the songs on this soundtrack, as Kyle alluded to, the Last American Virgin song, which is performed by Tommy Heath, otherwise known as Tommy Two Tone, Shake It Up, Rick Ocasek and the Cars. Are You Ready for the Sex, Girls by the Gleaming Spires, which was also used in Revenge of the Nerds. I remember that. In the Flesh, Blondie. Sting does a song, dee doo doo da dee dee, that one, The Police. Human League has a song on there. The Waitresses, I Know What Boys Like. Devo, Whip It. Better Luck Next Time by Oingo Boingo. Keep on Loving You by REO Speedwagon. Since You're Gone by the Cars as well. Casey and the Sunshine Band have one on there. The Commodores. Journey, Open Arms, When I Find You, performed by Phil Seymour. U2 has a song on there, and the Plimsolls, 0 Hour. Great soundtrack. Highly recommend it. And Diane Franklin, by the way, she did her first nude scene in this, and she does talk about that in a book that she has written. Came out, I want to say, about maybe within the last 10 years, and she talks about being a teenage heartthrob. So there you go.
Cool.
Lacey, I'm going to go to you on this. I have not seen this film, but I own it. Should I watch the pirate movie starring Christy McNichol, Christopher Atkins, and Ted Hamilton?
Yes. I love this movie. This is in my top 10 movies of all time. It's my
really?
It's my number 3. It was directed by Ken Anakin, who directed a bunch of stuff for like Disney. He did Swiss Family Robinson, that kind of thing. This is a mock version of the Pirates of Penzance.
Okay.
It is a musical. They do all of the songs from the Pirates of Penzance in an 80s kind of remix kind of situation. The guy who plays the Admiral is hilarious, and I don't know how he says the words as fast as he does. I've never been able to sing along to his songs. But Ted Hamilton, George Hamilton's brother, he has a squeaky toy codpiece, so anytime someone accidentally brushes by him, it squeaks. It is horrible. Like, it's just
Okay.
Like there's not enough to yeah, it's delightful, and it's like everything that's the best weird, like cringy 80s. Wow, I can't believe we really did that, wore that, said that, saw that stuff, combined with an action pirate musical.
It's funny you say that, because you've sold me, and I actually found it at I think it was at a thrift store, and it was still sealed.
Love it. Oh my god.
Kyle, your thoughts on the pirate movie?
The pirate movie is one of those movies that I think, especially anybody of our age range, should be required in life to at least see one time. Now, it might not be everybody's cup of tea. It might not be, but they should be they should have to experience it, because it is very unique. It is such a sum of some of the craziness that came out during the 80s with movies like this and things like that. It's got the, of course, absolutely adorable Christy McNichol in it. And so
Right.
that bonus points for that. It's one of those movies where Kevin, you might even watch and go, I could have sworn I've seen this from somewhere, because I think scenes from it have been used in other films or on the internet for a lot of different things. But yeah, it's one of those ones. All the more power to you, Lacey. I'm so happy that you love it and get so much enjoyment from it. I'm not going to say it's a bad movie. It's just, it's an experience unto itself.
Lacey, you had a comment?
Well, yeah, that's where my name today comes from. Mabel without a K, is because when they introduce themselves, he says, "I'm Frederick" without a K. And she says, "I'm Mabel, also without a K." Wow, we have so much in common. Like, it's very punny. There's a lot. And it's also the only pirate movie I've ever seen that has an actual lightsaber fight in it. I'm just throwing that out there.
Well, it's interesting because this was actually filmed in Australia, and at the time, at $9 million budget, it was the most expensive one. And Kjell Nielsen, who played the very muscular pirate, played the character of Lord Humongous, leader of the Desert Bikers, of course, in Mad Max 2: The Road Warrior. So there you go. And Christopher Atkins got a hit with "How Can I Live Without Her," reached number 71 on the Billboard charts. There you go.
Yeah,
All
it
right.
even has like a scene underwater where they animated some bits and put like some fish. Like,
Okay.
It's got literally everything plus the kitchen sink in it.
You guys have sold me. I'm going to have to check it out. Okay. All right, guys. Next one, probably one of the most popular, I would say, teen romp sex comedies of all time, and that is Fast Times at Ridgemont High. At Ridgemont High, only the rules get busted. A group of Southern California high school students are enjoying their most important subjects, sex, drugs, and rock and roll. Directed by Amy Heckerling, written by Cameron Crowe, stars Sean Penn, Jennifer Jason Leigh, Judge Reinhold, and Phoebe Cates. Kyle, did you have a video cassette tape that was worn out during a certain part in this film?
I'm sorry, Kevin. I was working through my fast forward and rewind and pause. I mean, come on. Did they even use this as a joke in Stranger Things? This is so renowned, but this is one of the all-time 80 classic comedies. High school stoner, bit of everything films in it, and it's a classic. It's a classic.
It's got one of the best soundtracks too, I gotta say. I love all of the scenes of where it was shot, the mall, everything. But director Amy Heckerling had stated that she got Phoebe Cates to overcome her fear of doing the topless scene by assuring that the actress that it would only be for a few seconds and thus wouldn't allow people much time to stare. Ironically, in the following years, during the era of videotape, home video became a running joke at many video store rentals that copies of the Fast Times at Ridgemont High often suffered a predictable flicker during the topless moment in question because so many renters had paused the video on that shot, causing excessive wear on the tape at that location. Kyle?
This is, Kevin, where I'm going to actually agree with you on something. The advent of DVD ruined this piece of film history.
I wouldn't say ruined, but yeah.
It changed it for forever because, come on, that was the VHS Fast Times at Ridgemont High flicker, as they talk about, is like Hall of Fame movie worthy, right there. Just that story alone and how it happened. But yeah, DVD kind of ruined that experience in the what's the nostalgia experience of it.
Yeah. I feel like Lacey's been giving us mental eye rolls while we've been talking about this. Lacey, your thoughts on Fast Times at Ridgemont High?
I liked Summer School better.
Summer School's fun. I like Summer School.
I feel, you know what? This was good. It was funny, but it was the it follows that trope of having to have like one nerd and one jock and one, which is fine, but after they did it in the Breakfast Club, nobody ever needed to do that again because that's the quintessential like throwing 5 people together and calling it a day. Again, I was too young to see this when it was out. So I probably saw it 5 years later. I met Judge Reinhold. He is the nicest human being on the planet. I have a picture of us doing the close talker thing. He's just the nicest guy you could ever meet.
Nice Seinfeld reference. I love that. That was good.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
This is kind of like, this is one of those films that I ended up seeing it on VHS. Of course, I didn't have HBO and might have had a copy forever. This is like one of the most iconic, and it's also just a great soundtrack as well. And Nicolas Cage, by the way, he lied about his age so he could get a bigger part, but the producers eventually found out that he was only 17.
Wasn't he like one of the skater friends with Edward?
I think so. I can't remember.
Anthony Edwards.
Yeah. I think so. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
All right, guys. Next film is another hidden action gem, and that is The Soldier. A terrorist take over a plutonium bomb and threaten to detonate it in Saudi Arabia oil field. A special anti-terrorist unit is sent in to stop them. Directed by James Glickenhaus, stars Ken Wall, Alberta Watson, Jeremiah Sullivan, Klaus Kinski as a villain, and one of my favorite 80s action heroes of all time, Mr. Steve James. Ken Wall was getting on the action radar here, guys. And this was kind of one of those special forces mission things where, Kyle, we did a podcast earlier this year talking about what was it? The Final Option, British SAS Secret Service. So this was kind of like a U.S. version, similar on the same things as like Delta Force and stuff like this. And Ken Wall was really good in this film. And I, of course, was going down a rabbit hole of watching Steve James films. Of course, he is the standout of the American Ninja films. He's in those as well, and died too young, but a great action film. I really like this. A little bloody at moments too, which is also good. And James Glickenhaus is one of those action directors that did also one of my favorite movies, 1988 Shakedown with Mr. Peter Weller, of course. And he did The Exterminator as well. And he kind of tends to cross promote his films in other films. Like, you know, I think Shakedown, one of his films was playing at the movie theater that they went to and stuff like that. Lacey, I think you're a Ken Wall fan. Have you seen The Soldier?
I'm like 80% sure I have. Again, I mean, he did about 8 or 10 movies in that 5 or 7 year kind of time.
Yeah. He did The Exterminator, The Soldier, Protector, Shakedown, McBain. And then he went on to do Wise Guy. But yeah, I know I've seen it. I didn't rewatch it for this because I knew I'd seen it. Look, he's one of the few like action film stars that are, he can actually carry a scene as well and not look like he's trying to hold it in a bucket. And that's delightful. Kyle, have you seen The Soldier?
I have not seen The Soldier, but I was definitely getting some Final Option vibes from it when I watched the trailer. Yeah. But I want to say this about Ken Wall because it's such an interesting career. Obviously, his probably most known thing for it is Wise Guy. But Kevin, did he just feel like he was? We talked about it with the gentleman who was the lead in The Final Option too. Just never really found the franchise for him in movies, and it was like just a lot of lost potential there.
Agreed. And he was great in Wise Guy. And the films that I were mentioning earlier was the ones that was directed by Glickenhaus. But Wall was one of those guys I felt like should have been a bigger star. Very charismatic. And the Wise Guy TV series I watched religiously. So yeah.
And I was also a little bummed that he never made an appearance in any of the Expendables movies. He was one of the guys for a good solid decade, you know?
Yeah, he just didn't have that huge hit. He just didn't have that thing. So, all right, guys, very important film in late night television history. And it's one of the reasons why I didn't see this until maybe about 2 or 3 years ago for the first time. And I was put on Fandom Podcast Network trial because of it.
And that is something else with Mark Singer that you were, but we brought this up too.
And that is The Beastmaster. I finally did get around to watching Beastmaster and V, of course, which I also had not seen. This stars Mark Singer, Tanya Roberts, Rip Torn, John Amos. A sword and sorcery fantasy about a young man's search for revenge. Armed with supernatural powers, the handsome hero and his animal allies wage war against marauding forces. Dar, the son of a king, is hunted by a priest after his birth, and so he's sent to grow up with another family. So on and so forth, guy. I would say that probably the animals in this film maybe upstage him. There's a nasty scene with kids being sacrificed, which I didn't expect to see. Lacey, you were holding up a signed picture. Please tell us about that and your love of Beastmaster.
Super nice guy.
Mark Singer, that's a Mark Singer's autograph picture you have?
Yes. I love this movie. It was on like every 2.5 hours on like TBS when I was a kid. Like it was legitimately on 6 times a day over the weekends for like 2 years. And I mean, I could probably start and just have it on silent and speak the dialogue through the entire thing. The number of times I've seen it. You know, it was one of those movies where it was PG enough that I could watch it and not, have a problem or whatever. And then, I watched it probably 10 years later or whatever. And I was like, oh, well, I probably shouldn't have been watching this when I was 9. I mean, okay. But yeah, the sacrificing of the kid when he holds the kid by the foot. And I was just like, oh, Okay. Did they get permission from that kid's mother? Goodness gracious. I will say this is my favorite villain that Rip Torn played.
Yeah.
His career, like he's fantastic, just fantastic. And John Amos, I mean, he can do no wrong. Like everything he was in was fantastic. But this is just such a great, like, it's such a great character. I don't know. I loved it all. I was shocked that this didn't get more play than Conan. As far as larger, fandom, I guess.
Gotcha. Yeah. It's definitely fall under a cult status there, Kyle. Yeah. And as we mentioned before, that this was on heavy rotation on HBO and TBS, and it was shown so often in some dubbed TBS, the Beastmaster station.
Yeah.
Kyle,
your
it's thoughts?
So true. So
Kyle, your thoughts on Beastmaster?
So we have a segment on Culture Clash that we haven't visited in a while, but we call it the VHS double feature, where we take a couple of movies, try to match them together. I had recorded on a VHS Megaforce and Beastmaster. I love this movie. I'm actually a big Mark Singer fan too. I understand why this movie never hit those Conan heights Schwarzenegger came out with. Like, Schwarzenegger is larger than life. He's amazing. I still to this day do agree with Lacey. Beastmaster is highly underrated. You've got all these animals. You got the cute little ferrets. You've got the tiger. Kevin, you got Tanya Roberts topless in this movie. I'm just
baby.
Throw that out. You have an incredibly cool weapon in the Spirit of the Glaive. He has this like throwing weapon that's really cool. You talk about the sacrificing of the kid, but you know what scared me even more? There's a scene with these creatures that he eventually allies up with because they see he's accepted by the Hawk, but they're these creatures that pop up and wrap their prey around him, and all that comes at the bottom is like this green liquid. And they were like the early template for the Jeepers Creepers monster or something like that.
Yes.
But no, I love this film. Singer's great in it. I think this is the start of the 80s apex of Mark Singer, because just a year later, the original V miniseries comes out, and then that blows up, and he's huge for that for a while. This is one of those ones, if you're an 80s fantasy fan, if you haven't watched this, go find this. Please find this. This was going to be so much fun.
Yeah, Lacey?
I just wanted to note that my copy of the Beastmaster was Beastmaster and Cole the Conqueror.
Nice.
That was the VHS that I had. Yeah,
that's a good double feature. Yeah, no, I was really pleasantly surprised watching this film for the first time, and I felt like I missed out. I wish I could have been in on those, but never got around to watching it. I'm glad that.
Wait, so you just watched it recently for the first time?
Yeah, about 3 years ago. Yeah,
nice.
Three years ago. Yeah, watched it the first time.
One thing on this too is they did a syndicated TV series of the Beastmaster, and it was a different actor for a while in the Beastmaster role, but they did bring back Mark Singer's character for this show as well for a time. So
cool.
He did reprise this role later on. I think it was in the 90s for this.
Nice, very, very cool. All right, guys. Next film is an interesting film, The Class of 1984. Of course, this movie came out in 82, but was filmed in 81. And so this kind of looks to the future a little bit, is what they're trying to say. A new teacher at a troubled inner city high school soon ends up clashing with the delinquent leader of a punk posse that runs the school. Directed by Mark L. Lester, starring Perry King, Mary Lynn Ross, Timothy Van Patten, Roddy McDowell, Michael J. Fox. Mark Lester said the film was inspired by several true stories of school violence he had read about in papers. In particular, was a story of a teacher who brought a gun to class to control his students. The scene ended up in the film. And due to the film's violent content and full frontal nudity, Lester had a difficult time getting U.S. distributors for the film. Through overseas, numerous distributors bought the film and made it quite successful abroad. And Mark L. Lester, I was trying to remember who he was from. Oh, yeah, he directed Commando. He directed Firestarter, producer on Showdown Little Tokyo. Guys, this is kind of a nasty film. This is one of the films that can only be made in the 80s, but I really did like it. It kind of falls, there's a lot of those high school like the Principal with James Belushi, where things get kind of nasty. Of course, she has the Substitute series as well. But the gang in this is really nasty. The action in it towards the end ends in death and gets nasty. This is stuff that scares you, basically. However, I loved it. I thought it was great. Lacey, you have a copy of this on Blu-ray. I've got the DVD. Yeah, your thoughts on
does the DVD
1984?
Have all the interviews on it?
Let's see here. I got audio commentary by Mark Lester, and that's it.
Gotcha. Okay, mine does. Oh, it does. Oh, I haven't seen the commentary.
I had to get mine from overseas. That's why. So yeah,
gotcha.
Your thoughts?
Okay, so this is like the new, like the re-release or whatever. There are some interviews on that disc that have like they're about this film like adjacent. There's a 45-minute interview with Perry King where he goes film by film through his entire career and talks about everything. He talks about all the different actors that he met, all the directors he worked with. It is a fantastic interview. If you have any interest in hearing about like Lords of Flatbush and all the stuff that he went through, like with Mandingo and all those other movies that he did, really, really good interview with him.
What did he say? What did he say about 84? Do you recall? Class of 1984.
He had some very specific hesitations about it, just because the content was so violent. But he said that, it's interesting because this was a warning, but about how, teenagers were getting more and more violent, and that everybody was like, oh, great, that's a great movie, whatever. And then, within 10 years or 12 years, we've got Columbine and all these other, mass shootings and all this kind of stuff. And it just hasn't stopped since. But he talked more about like what his high school experience was versus how this was. And so he was talking about the relation between him being in high school in the 60s or late 60s or whatever. And then what this was like and how it was so kind of, he felt like fish out of water. Like, this is like, does this really happen? Like, is this
right?
Yeah. And then the two ladies, the girl punk rocker, Patty, and then the other female lead, the other student, they both did an interview that was really, really interesting. The director did a really interesting interview. There's a bunch of stuff on this about how he chose, how he got how he got the studio to actually agree to put the film in theaters. And they said basically like, well, we need a guarantee from a theater chain, any theater chain, that they'll put this movie in the theaters. And so he went around to every movie theater chain he could find to ask them personally and to screen it for them. And he finally found one theater one guy from a theater chain who said that he would put it in. And they were like, he was like, okay, well, let me get you in touch with Warner Brothers. And he was like, you've done the job. I'll give you own the movie, right? And it was great. Yep. So he made $1 million by cutting out the middleman because the middleman told him to do the work for him.
Well, by the way, real quick, Kyle, I want to get your thoughts real quick. But in 1990, Mark L. Lester returned and did a movie called Class of 1999, which I have not seen. I heard it's not as good, but I do want to check it out. Kyle, have you seen Class of 1984?
So I have. What's kind of fun is Shout Factory, who has brought this back out, has an app now, and you can find this on their streaming app, and it's a free.
Oh, very cool!
It's a free streaming app. So this movie is. First of all, they were on the good drugs when they made this movie. Let's be honest here. The cocaine was flowing when they made this movie. But Kevin, more importantly, Han Solo is in this movie.
I'm glad you mentioned that, Kyle. Wait a minute. Harrison Ford is not in this film, Kyle. Do tell. I'll let you tell this one.
Perry King, who is kind of, to me, one of those that guy actors. He's got that face that's very recognizable, but he's never been in anything super. But Kevin, knowing that you are a huge fan of the original audio dramas of these Star Wars films, Perry King was the man who would put a voice to Han Solo in those audio dramas. And
let me tell you, Kyle.
I know how important those are to you.
Yeah. No, I remember listening to the first one live as it aired with my mom, and then because the first one didn't come out, I think, until 1981, I think, and then they soon did Empire Strikes Back, and Perry King does the voice for Han Solo, and he's really good in it. Mark Hamill did return for Star Wars and Empire Strikes Back and did Luke, and then Anthony Daniels did the voice of C-3PO, and then all the other voices were done by other people. But Perry King also returned later in the 90s when they finally did Return of the Jedi, and he also came back as Han Solo. So yeah, and he looked good in this with his beard. I liked him with the beard. I thought he looked really cool, very cool. So yeah,
you know who he kind of, with his face and the beard in this, who he reminded me a little bit of, is Joel Kinnaman.
Yeah, I could see that. Yeah, definitely. All right, guys. The next film, I gotta say, I saw in the drive-in. Oh, wait. No, not this one. Sorry.
I was going to say, really?
No, we got to talk about this one. Let's go to this one first, guys.
I was just waiting for that to scroll up. I was like,
No, I'll get to the drive-in one. But no, this one I did want to bring up, guys. I couldn't find this anywhere. And this is Homework.
Yeah,
this is Homework, starring Joan Collins, Michael Morgan, Shelley Kepler. And this is basically... the older lady seducing the younger boy. A good-looking but virginal rock star teen, Tommy, played by Michael Morgan, tries to score with some of his local high school girls. But a classmate's mom, played by Dame Joan Collins, decides to make a man out of him. After the success of films such as My Tutor from 1983 and Private Lessons 1981, and Joan Collins' renewed popularity after her appearance in Dynasty in 81, this 1975 film was reworked with additional scenes and a misleading advertising campaign. The new scenes featured an unconvincing nude double for Collins in scenes of her character seducing a youth, and the film promoted as an older woman's seduction story. A billboard showing a concealed nude image of Collins greatly angered the actress, guys. I don't know. This is probably lost in the ether somewhere, but I find this fascinating. If anyone knows how to find this movie called Homework, you can't do it enough is the tagline with Joan Collins. Lacey, have you ever heard of this before?
I have, and I remember, vaguely remember seeing it on like a soap opera channel or something, a decade later, and at night. And I remember when we had the list, I actually started looking it up. I did find it is available on Laserdisc.
Okay. All right.
It is on eBay. You can find it.
That's those big round things that people used to watch movies on, right?
Yeah. Kind of like a Lazy Susan without the lazy part. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I kid.
Those big round things you still watch movies on?
Yes, I do. I have 3 Laserdisc players and over 100 Laserdisc. Yes.
Nice.
Well, I'm going to have to look in the Laserdisc ether world and try to find that because I'm very curious about this. Kyle, you'd watch this, right?
It's Joan Collins.
Yeah.
You gotta check it out. It's Dame Joan Collins. You got to give her all the respect she deserves.
Yes. Homework. Let's find it. All right. The next movie, as I was referring to, guys, that I saw in the drive-in with my parents is The Junk Man, the chase thriller of the 80s from the makers of Gone in 60 Seconds, from junk cars to movie cars. And I have the DVD right here. The Guinness World Records, over 150 cars, trucks, and motorcycles and planes are wrecked. That's how they sold this film, guys, because it's about a stuntman who gets in over his head. The plot really doesn't matter. It's all about the cars and the action, guys. But what I love about this is that the original poster says, win a new Pontiac Firebird. Watch for details. Gone in 60 Seconds, guys. This movie, I loved it at the time. Directed by H.B. Halicki. Writer by him as well. He stars in it. He's a star. And Christopher Stone and Susan Shaw co-host or co-star in this. With as many stunts gone wrong in the first film, Gone in 60 Seconds in 1994, director H.B. Halicki was almost killed several times in accidents during production. The worst involved a scene where he, playing the lead Harlan Hollis, was driving towards one of the hitmen's planes and both collided head-on when pilot Tony Ostermeyer misjudged the distance between them. One of the wings came through the car's windshield and hit Halicki, while the plane crashed behind them. Both escaped with relatively minor injuries, but the car Halicki was driving, a in 1980 Cadillac Eldorado was wrecked, as well as the plane, and both had to be replaced for the filming to continue. And this film held the Guinness Book of World Records for most number of vehicles, planes wrecked in one movie for more than 20 years. It was eclipsed in 2003 by Matrix Revolutions, 300 plus working vehicles on loan from GM, which was itself beaten by Transformers 3 with 332 vehicles destroyed. But
532.
I'm sorry, yeah, 532 vehicles destroyed. But they were unusable flood damage vehicle rescheduled for destruction anyway. Guys, have you guys heard of this film? Kyle? Lacey?
No, I gotta be honest with you, haven't.
This movie took 2 years to make. It is a lot of fun to watch. It is silly. But seeing all of it had so much action in it, so many chase scenes. And if you love, like, imagine going to, remember, I don't know if they still have them, but the derbies where the cars would just crash into each other. Kyle, do you remember this was kind of a thing in the 80s?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, this was a big thing, especially in this late 70s, early 80s. There was a lot of Demolition Derby going on.
Demolition Derby, yes. This is basically a live action version of that in a film with a small plot. You don't need a lot of plot in this. I highly recommend. It's a lot of fun. And of course, if you're a fan of the original Gone in 60 Seconds, this is from the director and star in that as well. So, and the phenomenal box office success of this allowed director and star H.B. Lucky to buy all the property, vehicles, and memorabilia seen in this film as owned by character Harlan Hollis. He owned the world's largest toy and automobile collection, which sat untouched for several years after his death until 1989, till litigation forced nearly the entire lot to be auctioned off in 1992. So anyway, check it out, The Junk Man. And I have vivid memories of seeing that at the drive-in. So I think my dad liked it too, but I'm pretty sure my mom hated it. All right, guys, we're going to get into, before we get into the cutting room floor, by the way, I did want to mention that in the top 10 films, the two of that we talked about that made it was The Best Little Whorehouse in Texas, made it to number 9 in the top 10, $69 million. And Officer and Gentleman made it up to number 3, $129 million. So they made it. But guys, we have some films in the cutting room floor. These are films we're not going to spend hardly any time on at all, but I'm going to let you guys pick one and give me 30 seconds about it. The first films that we are not discussing is Tempest. We have Young Doctors in Love, The World According to Garp, Pink Floyd The Wall, Friday the 13th Part 3 in 3D, and Jekyll and Hyde Together Again. Kyle, I think what you're going to talk about, so I'm going to go to you first, Lacey. Which film do you want to give 30 seconds of love to?
I'll say Young Doctors in Love. It's interesting to watch. Gary Marshall, Michael McKean, Sean Young. It's kind of MASH with a parody twist of like a hospital situation, but in the United States. And it's kind of traditional Gary Marshall, everybody's in love and everything's happy, whatever. But it's got some weird stuff in it. There's some weird. It took a left turn somewhere in the middle. There's some weird stuff in it. So yeah, definitely check that out. And also, I think was Molly Ringwald's debut.
Okay. Gotcha. And by the way, this is the first cinema movie directed by Gary Marshall, and Paul Stanley of Kiss filmed a cameo as a singer with a microphone stuck in his mouth, but the scene was cut later on. All right, guys, the movie that I would like to actually give a shout out to, and of course it's, I'm not an expert in this genre, but I want to talk about Friday the 13th Part 3 in 3D. And Kyle, you mentioned to me before we started that this is something you want to mention as well. I bought this on DVD because I was curious about it for two reasons. I wanted to see how the DVD in 3D would work, because the special deluxe edition DVD that I have actually has inside of it 3D glasses, and I'm wearing one of them now. And this also is famous too because it is the first time that Jason dons his hockey mask. And with cheap 3D glasses with the red and the blue in it, I got to tell you, the 3D was very effective. There were some great death scenes exaggerated with 3D, I got to say. Thoroughly enjoyed it for that reason only. Kyle, your thoughts on Friday the 13th Part 3 in 3D?
Two things. First of all, the history-making moment of Jason wearing the hockey mask, and the rest is history, without a doubt. About every 15 years since its first incarnation, Hollywood feels like we need to have a 3D renaissance. And this was a big time in the 80s for the 3D renaissance, because you had this, you had Jaws 3 3D, you had a even made-for-TV movie with about a large ape that was in 3D, and there's several other 3D movies at this time. Never really caught on like they were hoping. I think the 3D renaissance we had, Kevin, in the early 2000s when Avatar came out, really kind of lasted a lot longer than any of us suspected. It's still kind of hanging on by a thread right now. But James Cameron might be fixing that shortly. But yeah, the 3D thing with Hollywood, it's a fun history. If you ever want to check it out sometime, do some research on the internet, because the history of 3D in Hollywood is great. I just want to throw out real quick too. You have World According to Garp. You combine that with Officer and a Gentleman, your insomnia will be cured for life.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. I never got around to seeing any of those, but I did see Friday the 13th, and that DVD was like only $5, and it was fun in 3D. I just gotta say. So,
nice.
Yeah. All right, guys. That's it for the cutting room floor. I wanted to get your guys' thoughts and final thoughts on time. All right, Kyle, give me your final thoughts on this segment of Time Warp 1982, Part 4. We're talking some July and August.
This is one of those groups of Time Warp where we have some absolute classics in there, where they might not be the biggest movies. Obviously, you had a couple that were in the top 10 all grossing, but so many cult classics, whether you're talking Tron, Beastmaster, Night Shift, just a lot to revisit, a lot to have fun with. And this is one of the reasons why we love doing Time Warp, is because we get some of these fun movies that, you know what, for some, they might not have ever experienced yet, or you know what, it's been a long time and they forgot about them. And hopefully we're giving you a reminder to go check out these films, because it either brings back some great nostalgia memories or it's a great first time experience.
Yeah. Lacey, your thoughts on this round of Time Warp 1982?
3 words: the pirate movie. Yeah.
You're really pushing that on me, aren't you? I should
see it.
Honestly,
if you did the pirate movie and 6-pack in like a combo, like just to have a night, they're both really light and funny and relaxed, and yeah, I think that you're going to enjoy both of those.
Okay, that's cool. Well, I got to find 6-pack. If you guys can recommend where to maybe find it streaming, I'd like to definitely check it out. It sounds like a fun one there. So let me know. I will check that out, because I think it was I think it was on DVD, like on Amazon or something. You could probably purchase it from there if I remember correctly. So yeah. All right, guys. So the ones that you haven't seen, I got to ask you this. Which movies, if any, would you consider watching that you haven't seen that we have discussed? And Lacey, let's start with you.
I'm going through and I'm looking, and I think I've seen all of them with the exception of the 2 with Vengeance in the title, and Homework, which I can't find. I vaguely remember seeing it. I'm pretty sure that it would be maybe the Junkman one.
Junkman, okay, yeah.
Last American Virgin. I just ordered that, so yes, okay. I'll be watching that one.
There is a triple feature of the Junkman, Gone in 60 Seconds, and there was another one of his films that he did too, that you can get together as one thing and then watch it. It's very cheap too, so it's pretty cool. Gotcha. So Kyle, what about you? What would you like to see that we've discussed and you haven't seen?
I'm hitting up the challenge.
Yeah, buddy. Please do. Please do.
You know that's up my alley, Mr.
Yeah, I'm talking to Adam, who does, of course, host Lethal Mullet. He's familiar with it. I may have to jump on a Lethal Mullet with that one. That's how much I like it. It's good. Yeah. Nice. For me, I've kind of touched on it. I've got the pirate movie right here in front of me. I've definitely got to watch that. Right? It's right here. I also have a double feature, of course, Nice Dreams and Things Are Tough All Over. So maybe I can squeeze in a Cheech and Chong there. God, what else is up here that I haven't seen yet? I do kind of want to rewatch the last Best Little Whorehouse in Texas. I wouldn't mind watching that one again, though. But I'm going to definitely hit the pirate movie for you there, Lacey. So the next time we get together, hopefully I'll get that done and get it done out of the way. So there we go.
Nice.
All right, guys, let's get into what we're going to be talking about here on the Fandom Podcast Network. Some other things that we're going to be mentioning in the next episodes of 1982 Time Warp. And that is the final option, of course. Eating Raoul, the Shadow Riders, the Sorceress, Ladies and Gentlemen, the Fabulous Stains, First Blood, Jinxed, the Plague Dogs, and Tootsie, and several others. Kyle.
I just want to remind people to go on the Couch Potato Theater feed on the Fandom Podcast Network webpage. We did a great Couch Potato Theater with the host of Type 40, Dan Hadley, who gave us the overseas UK side of the final option. It's a wonderful podcast we did. Give it a listen.
Yeah, it was the British version was Who Dare? Oh gosh, I'm forgetting it.
Who Dare Win? Who Dares Win?
Who Dares Wins was the European release name for it, and we know it as the final option. It was really kind of like the first special forces movie that came out, and it's really, really good. So make sure you guys check that out. All right, guys, let's get into some contact information here. All right, guys. First of all, you are listening to the Fandom Podcast Network, and also watch it on YouTube, Fandom Podcast Network YouTube channel. We have this video up. We hope you're watching it right now. Appreciate that. And of course, give us a subscribe on YouTube, and also please check out our master feed for all of our audio podcasts at fpnet.podbean.com. And of course, all the audio podcasts can be found on all our major podcast platforms, of course, which include Apple Podcasts and iTunes. Check out the Fandom Podcast Network on Facebook. You can email us at fandompodcastnetwork@gmail.com. The Fandom Podcast Network is also on Instagram and Twitter. My name is Kevin. I am on Twitter and Instagram at Spartan_Phoenix. Kyle, where can we find you?
You can find me on Twitter at AKyleW, Greetings Programs. And you can find me on Instagram at AKyleFandom. I should have never written all those tank programs.
Lacey, where can we find you?
I'm on Instagram and Facebook. I don't do the Twitter these days.
Okay.
It's gotten too crazy.
Gotcha.
Is it a little musky?
Yeah, well, maybe. It just got weirdly political all of a sudden. I was like, y'all, I'm gonna step back for a minute.
You're on the Lacey Pants, right?
Yeah.
Lacey Pants. All right, perfect.
Lacey Pants.
Gotcha. Also, please give us some love reviews on Apple Podcast, iTunes, or any of your podcast platforms. We love 5-star reviews. And head on over to TeePublic. You can get my Time Warp t-shirt as well as our other t-shirts from our other awesome podcast on the Fandom Podcast Network. You can just search Fandom Podcast Network on TeePublic. Appreciate that. Lacey, thank you so much for coming on. We really appreciate you and your movie Kung Fu. And I love it when you get me excited for movies I haven't seen. I appreciate that.
Yay. I'm so excited. It's one of those things where I'm jealous because you get to see it for the first time. And I know you're just going to be like, that's awesome. I mean, you might not actually tee-hee, but
yeah. I'll
Right.
tee-hee. I tee-hee all the time. Yeah. Kyle, as always, brother, thank you so much. Love nerding out with you.
Oh, this is always fun. I love doing Time Warp. It's one of the favorite things we do here on the Fandom Podcast Network. But if you excuse me, I got to go do some homework with Phoebe Cates.
Yes, buddy. All right, guys. Again, join us next time for Time Warp. We'll be closing out the year of 1982 with some great movies. Thank you, guys, everyone, and enjoy Time Warp.
Woo.